By the time Marcus Holloway stepped into the Magnolia Room in downtown Atlanta, every head at Danielle's birthday dinner had already turned toward the entrance. The private room glowed amber under chandelier light, full of polished wood, expensive perfume, loud laughter, and the kind of people who loved watching somebody else's life fall apart. Danielle sat at the center of the long table in a red dress that made sure no one missed her. She didn't smile when Marcus walked in. She leaned back, crossed her legs, lifted her glass, and looked at him like she had been waiting all night for her favorite scene. Marcus was 36, broad-shouldered, steady-eyed, and quiet in the way people often mistook for weakness until they needed someone dependable. He had built his life the slow way. No gimmicks, no shortcuts. He ran a growing freight dispatch company out of College Park, took care of the mortgage on their brick house in South Fulton, helped his mother in Decatur every Sunday, and never spoke louder than necessary. Danielle used to say his calm made her feel safe. Lately, she said that same calm was boring. What nobody in that room knew was Marcus had stopped coming to events like this blind weeks ago. 3 years earlier, Marcus and Danielle looked like the couple everyone rooted for. They met at a cookout in Piedmont Park, where Danielle's laugh carried farther than the music and Marcus had ended up grilling because the host burned the chicken. She was magnetic, ambitious, beautiful, and knew it. He was measured, observant, and harder to read. Together, they balanced each other, at least in the beginning. Danielle sold luxury real estate around Buckhead and knew how to command a room. Marcus didn't need rooms. He built spaces people could stand on. For a while, that difference felt like chemistry instead of a warning. Things changed slowly, the way trouble usually does when it plans on staying. Danielle started staying later at networking events and dressing for dinner like she expected cameras. She became sharper with Marcus in public, correcting him, cutting him off, laughing when friends joked he was too quiet to keep up with her. At first he ignored it, thinking stress had changed her rhythm. But then came the little omissions. A dinner she forgot to mention. A weekend showing that turned into an overnight stay. A phone suddenly flipped face down. Respect did not vanish overnight in their marriage. It leaked out in teaspoons. The first real crack came at a Sunday family dinner in Decatur. Marcus's sister, Janelle, noticed Danielle texting through Grace and arching her mouth like she was holding in a grin. Later, while everyone cleaned up, Danielle disappeared onto the back porch. Janelle came inside with a look Marcus knew too well. Not panic, confirmation. She told him she had heard Danielle whisper, "He still doesn't know." Relax. Marcus asked no questions. He simply nodded and finished stacking plates. That was who he was. He never chased answers in the heat of embarrassment. He waited until the truth got tired and walked into the light. A week later, Marcus discovered the first name, Terrence Vale. It appeared on a valet receipt tucked inside Danielle's purse from a hotel in Midtown. She had told him she was showing a condo to a retired couple from Houston that night. Marcus almost laughed when he saw the timestamp. He had spoken to her at that exact hour while she claimed she was between closings. He did not explode. He did not confront her. Instead, he folded the receipt, slid it into a manila envelope in his home office, and sat in silence. Something in him had shifted from confusion to investigation. That envelope became a file. Marcus wasn't trying to catch Danielle in one lie anymore. He was mapping a pattern. Over the next month, he noted every inconsistency with the precision he used in business. Missing weekends, mismatched stories, charges from restaurants she said she hated, a second phone charger in her car, a men's cologne scent that wasn't as caught in the lining of her coat. Then he found another piece of the puzzle through accident or fate. While syncing their shared tablet for a tax receipt, a message flashed across the screen. "You sure your husband coming Friday?" Followed by a laughing emoji. Marcus clicked nothing. He didn't have to. The sender's name was saved as TV. He recognized the initials at once. That night, he sat on the edge of their bed while Danielle showered and listened to the water hit tile. He looked at the framed wedding photo on the dresser. She had her head tilted toward him, smiling like forever was easy. He remembered every sacrifice he had made to protect that life. Then he remembered the message. When Danielle stepped out in a cloud of steam, he simply asked whether she was still attending a brokerage mixer that Friday. She answered yes without blinking. Friday came, and Marcus followed her once. Not because he needed proof anymore, but because something in him wanted to know whether betrayal looked as ugly in person as it felt in private. Danielle drove past the brokerage lounge she had mentioned and into the underground parking garage of the Archer Hotel in Midtown. Marcus stayed half a block away. 20 minutes later, he saw Terrence emerge from a black Range Rover and greet Danielle with the kind of familiarity that destroys illusions on contact. He touched the small of her back. She laughed too freely. They walked inside like no one existed outside themselves. Terrence Vale was exactly the kind of man Marcus suspected. Smooth, expensive, loud enough to sell confidence as character. He owned a chain of car detailing franchises around Metro Atlanta, had been on local podcasts, and carried himself like applause belonged to him. What Marcus did not expect was to recognize someone else climbing out of Terrence's SUV moments later. Devin Sykes, Danielle's cousin's husband, a man who had spent Thanksgiving at Marcus's table calling marriage sacred. Marcus didn't understand the connection yet, but the discovery tightened the story. This wasn't one affair thriving in darkness. It was something messier, wider, and more deliberate. Over the next 2 weeks, Marcus learned more than he had prepared himself to handle. Devin wasn't involved romantically with Danielle. He was covering for her. Text records on a shared phone account revealed repeated calls between Devin and Danielle on nights she claimed she was with female clients. Marcus also saw transfers from Danielle's personal account to Devin labeled, "Thank you." Then came a deeper cut. One message from Danielle to Devin read, "As long as Marcus thinks you were with me, he won't question Terrence." Marcus leaned back in his office chair and stared at the screen until dawn. The betrayal had become collaborative. The next discovery came from someone Marcus never expected. Mrs. Elaine Porter, his next-door neighbor, 68 and observant enough to notice storms before weather reports did. She stopped Marcus while he collected mail and asked if Danielle had gotten a new vehicle. He said no. Mrs. Porter frowned and mentioned a silver Mercedes had been parked outside their house twice in the afternoon while Marcus was at work. She also recalled seeing Danielle laughing in the driveway with a tall man in a camel overcoat. Marcus thanked her politely, but after he went inside, he stood in the kitchen gripping the counter until his knuckles paled. Still, what cut Marcus deepest was not the affair. It was the contempt wrapped around it. Danielle had not only betrayed him, she had built entertainment out of it. Janelle forwarded him a clip from an Instagram live Danielle's friend Monique had posted at a lounge in Buckhead. In the background, Danielle's voice rose clear enough to hear over the music. "A man like Marcus is good for bills, not thrills," she said, and the women around her shrieked with laughter. Marcus replayed that part only once. Not from pain, from discipline. Some moments, he knew, needed to be remembered exactly as spoken. After that, Marcus stopped thinking in terms of saving his marriage. He started thinking in terms of ending it with dignity. He met quietly with a divorce attorney in Sandy Springs named Adrian Cole, whose office overlooked a line of bare winter trees and whose first question was whether he wanted revenge or resolution. Marcus told her the truth. He wanted peace, but he also wanted no room for manipulation. Adrian nodded, like she had heard that answer from good men before. She told him documentation mattered, timing mattered, and most importantly, composure mattered. Marcus left her office with a plan and slept deeply for the first time in weeks. Danielle, meanwhile, grew bolder. She started inviting people into their business in subtle, humiliating ways. At a couple's game night in East Point, she joked that Marcus needed permission to have a personality. At brunch in Buckhead with her friends, she called him Atlanta's nicest robot. Everyone laughed because Marcus smiled and let them. That was always their mistake. They assumed silence meant surrender. But Marcus had learned something critical about loud people. They often reveal their strategy before they realize the room has turned. Danielle didn't know he was no longer trying to win her back. He was letting her finish exposing herself. Then came the invitation that told Marcus exactly how the story would climax. Danielle announced she wanted a glamorous birthday dinner at the Magnolia Room, inviting family, friends, clients, and a few people Marcus barely knew but she considered good for energy. She insisted he be there. Not just there, but seated beside her for the toast. Try to be fun tonight, she told him with a smile that had no warmth in it. Marcus looked at her and saw the plan as clearly as if she had written it down. She was going to use a crowd to do what she no longer had the courage to do privately. 3 days before the dinner, Marcus made another discovery that changed everything. While sorting insurance documents in the office, he found a home equity application Danielle had started without telling him. Not completed, but drafted. Buried in the paperwork was an email thread between Danielle and a lender asking how quickly funds could be pulled once separation is in motion. Marcus felt something cold settle in his chest. She had not just been cheating and mocking him. She was preparing to leverage the life they built as a launchpad for her exit. That was the moment sadness finally gave way to absolute clarity. Adrian moved quickly after seeing the documents. She filed the initial divorce petition, advised Marcus on financial protections, and told him not to warn Danielle. He changed account permissions, documented the mortgage trail, secured business records, and arranged temporary housing with his college friend Isaiah in Marietta. Every step hurt, but every step strengthened him. He also printed what mattered most: the hotel receipt, the messages, the transfers to Devin, the equity application, and stills from the Instagram Live. He put them in the same manila envelope he had started with weeks earlier. It was no longer just evidence. It was the last chapter waiting for its moment. The night of the dinner, Marcus arrived 10 minutes late on purpose. He wore a dark charcoal suit Danielle had once bought him because she said he needed one thing in his closet that looked as serious as he was. The irony was not lost on him. Inside the private room, champagne flutes clinked and camera phones glowed. Danielle's mother, Loretta, gave him a tight smile. Monique avoided his eyes. Devin looked downright nervous. Then Marcus saw Terrence seated halfway down the table in a cream blazer, invited openly now, introduced to everyone as one of Danielle's top investors. The disrespect had gone fully public. Dinner began with fake warmth and sharp undercurrents. Danielle dominated every conversation, telling stories where she was brilliant, desirable, and misunderstood by lesser people. Terrence laughed the loudest. Marcus said very little. He noticed how often Danielle checked to see whether he looked upset. That told him everything. Her performance required his visible pain. Without it, the script had no engine. By dessert, the room had settled into that dangerous mood where gossip and spectacle start feeding each other. Then Danielle tapped her glass with a spoon, rose to her feet, and smiled the way people do when they believe they control both the narrative and the ending. "What can I say about Marcus?" Danielle began, drawing out his name for effect. "He's dependable, responsible, predictable." A few strained chuckles slipped around the table. She took a sip of wine and continued. "Some women want passion. Some want excitement. Some want a man who actually sees them. And if they don't get that," she shrugged dramatically, letting the implication land. Monique laughed. Terrence smirked. Danielle turned toward Marcus now, fully committed. "Let's just say nobody should be shocked when a woman goes looking elsewhere if home starts feeling like a prison." This time the room went truly silent. Marcus looked up at her slowly, not wounded, not angry, just awake in a way Danielle had not seen before. She mistook that calm for fear and pushed harder. She mentioned his boring routines, his small energy, and how she had carried the sparkle in the marriage by herself. Then came the line she thought would finish him. "A man who can't keep his woman shouldn't act surprised when somebody better can." Across the table, Terrence leaned back, pleased with himself. Several guests looked down, embarrassed. Danielle stood there smiling, believing she had finally reduced Marcus in the one place he couldn't recover. Marcus rose without haste and adjusted the cuff of his sleeve. The room tightened around him. Danielle expected shouting, denial, begging, maybe a storm dramatic enough to confirm every lie she had sold about him. Instead, he reached into his inside jacket pocket and placed the manila envelope on the table. "You're right about one thing," he said, voice calm and clear enough to stop every sound in the room. "Nobody should be shocked anymore." He opened the envelope, removed the hotel receipt first, and laid it beside Danielle's plate. Then came printed messages, then the bank transfers, then the equity paperwork. Danielle's face changed in stages. First annoyance, then confusion, then fear. Marcus did not raise his voice. He didn't need to. Midtown Archer Hotel. Friday, 8:17 p.m., same time you said you were with clients. Transfers to Devin for covering your story. Messages to Terrence. In this, he held up the equity application slightly. Your plan to pull from our home once you thought you could blindside me. Devin muttered Danielle's name under his breath, but nobody looked at him. Terrence stared at the table now. Loretta covered her mouth. The room had stopped belonging to Danielle the moment Marcus started naming facts instead of feelings. Danielle tried to recover by laughing. It came out thin and cracked. She said Marcus was invading her privacy, acting insecure, embarrassing himself. But the room no longer moved with her. Too many pieces had landed too cleanly. Marcus slid one final sheet across the table. The opening page of the divorce filing stamped earlier that afternoon. I'm not embarrassing myself, he said. I'm ending this before you do more damage and call it confidence. Then he looked directly at Terrence. And any man impressed by cheating done loudly should remember that public women create public endings. Terrence said nothing. He couldn't. Danielle's anger flared once she realized pity had replaced admiration in the room. So this is your big moment? She snapped. You think papers and screenshots make you a man? Marcus nodded once, almost to himself. No, character does. And that's the one thing you kept betting I didn't have enough of to leave. He turned to the table, to the witnesses she had gathered for his humiliation, and spoke the sentence that shattered whatever remained of her control. She didn't cheat because I was weak. She cheated because she thought I loved her too much to walk away. Nobody breathed for a second. What happened next was small, but Marcus would remember it for years. Monique looked at Danielle, then at the evidence, then quietly set down her fork and leaned away as if distance could keep shame from touching her. Loretta whispered, Danielle, tell me that isn't true, but her daughter had no answer ready. Devin stood, muttered that he should go, and left without meeting anyone's eyes. Terrence reached for his phone like he had somewhere important to be. The room that Danielle had filled with allies transformed into a mirror, and every reflection in it showed her exactly who she had become. Marcus gathered none of the papers back up. He left them there like a completed ledger. Then he removed his wedding band and placed it gently beside Danielle's glass. You wanted a scene, he said. What you got was the truth. Danielle finally found her voice enough to say his name, but it no longer had power in it. It sounded frightened now, uncertain, almost young. Marcus did not answer. He reached into his wallet, laid cash on the table for his meal alone, nodded respectfully to Danielle's mother, and turned toward the door. No slam chair, no curse, no backward glance, just finality. 29. Outside, the Atlanta night carried the cool edge of early spring. Marcus stood under the restaurant's awning and inhaled like a man who had been underwater too long. A few seconds later, Isaiah's truck pulled up to the curb. Marcus got in, loosened his tie, and looked once through the window. Through the glass, he could see movement, raised hands, the chaos Danielle had hoped to direct, now spinning beyond her control. He felt no triumph in the cruel sense, only release. The last weeks had stripped him down to truth, and truth, he realized, was lighter to carry than loyalty given to the wrong person. In the months that followed, Marcus rebuilt quietly. He moved with purpose, protected his company, spent more Sundays with his mother, and started mentoring young men at a community center in East Point who needed proof that strength did not have to be loud to be real. Danielle called more than once at first, then texted, then sent long apologies full of blame, disguised as regret. Marcus never answered. The story ended the night she tried to bury him in public and discovered he had already chosen his freedom. She wanted the crowd. He chose the last word. In the end, that was the only audience that mattered. If you love stories that make you gasp, laugh, and whisper no way in the same minute, hit subscribe because the next one is even worse.